our own success here, because obviously with the prize money levels quadrupled now in the last few years, and the pressure coming from China, we'll keep up in the money, it's putting pressure on us, because this is, we think, our second biggest event in the world. You know, the UK is a massive, massive event. So it's not just me being generous, because I'm not known for that, Hazel. What I am known for is being realistic, and realistic says the prize money's got to go up. So it's going up to £1 million next year. £200,000 will be the headline for the winner. More importantly, and I think we'll come on props to talk about this, is that the early round losers will be a little bit better looked after, because it's a tough old world out there. So extra £1 million, and the sky's the limit, you know.
Nice.
Great snooker events deserve great money, and this is a great snooker event.
Glad tidings indeed, Barry. Yeah, and it's not the first time that you've been making some headlines this week, because you've been on radio and in social media, and most of it in response to a certain Ronnie O'Sullivan who's been talking about some kind of breakaway tour. He's reined back on that, obviously, talking about a last resort. And before we talk about this, he's been sharing one or two of his frustrations with us earlier this week.
You want to feel settled, and you want to kind of have a schedule that at the start of the year you go, you know what, these are the tournaments I'm going to play, whether I win or lose, but this is a schedule, and I can then, you know, prepare, and, you know, and people like John Higgins and Selby would probably, you know, do that, but, you know, I'm not sure that's what they want, really. I think they want players feeling like they have to go to every event, but that's not going to work for me. You know, it's different strokes for different folks, hence why, you know, I spoke about a breakaway, because I just want to play. Wherever that is, you know, it doesn't really matter. You know, I just still enjoy competing and playing.
The ideal world, I think, would be maybe top 64 or 70, whatever, on the main tour. Everyone goes to every venue. Maybe take £1 million prize money off our main tour, put it into the challenge tour, and top 20 or whatever, however they want to do it, come through to get on the main tour. But whoever's on the main tour then can be guaranteed money, at least, I don't know, 20, 30,000 a year. So if you do get on the main tour, you're going to get some money. Now, if you lose, you get nothing.
They're potentially getting top 16 players nearly every tournament. No, it's extremely cutthroat, and for me, the tiered system, the way it used to be, is probably the fairest system for those guys to have a fair chance of coming through. There's always going to be one or two that break through regardless of the system. That doesn't mean that the system's right. If you put them against each other of a similar ranking, of a similar standard, let them play each other for a small amount of money, play someone better for a fractionally more bit of money, I think that would be a far better way to go.
We don't get to see the promotional side of it, and I know it's all about booking venues and stuff like that, and it's all on the sponsors, but maybe they could look at it maybe next year or the year after that and say, right, you all go over there for 5 weeks, play 4 tournaments, and that's the Asia side done, and then we come over, you know, UK, and then we've got Germany. Maybe it's an option, but listen, I don't run any tournaments, I just play.
I've got two brothers that work phenomenal hours and don't get the sort of joys of life that I get, and whenever I start to feel a bit sorry for myself as I board another plane, I just think, well, I could have been getting up 5 o'clock yesterday morning in the cold and sitting on a roof all day, you know. So no, I sort of soon come back to reality when I sort of get a bit bogged down with what we're doing.
You're rewarding players that are prepared, you know, to enter everything, rather than saying, well, OK, we're going to have 30, 40 events, but we're only going to take your best 10 as an average, a bit like what they do on a USPGA tour. So as some players want to go from tournament to tournament, they might be getting beat first round and think, you know what, I want to play in the next tournament, I want to play in the next tournament. But for someone like John Higgins, Mark Williams, Selby, myself, would go, OK, we've got 10 tournaments and that's going to be our average. I'll play 10 tournaments and back myself to do well in them tournaments because I'm going to prepare well, and my ranking isn't going to suffer.
Plenty to discuss,
Lovely.
Barry.
I love it. I love it.
Joe Perry's got a point. Obviously, we're very lucky in this sport to have a fantastic and a revolutionary base over the last few years. In fact, these are fantastic problems to have. But I guess the question remains: have we got the equation right, where the top players don't feel like they're having their arm twisted, have to play in everything?
I love those comments. You know, those comments justify to me why snooker nearly died when the players had control, because they don't take into account the commercial reality of the world we live in. First off, it's important to know that the players have the right. We're very unlike tennis and golf in as far as we don't set a minimum number of... So all of these comments about getting ready or being tired, take a week off. You don't have to play in every event. It's your choice. But I can't take away the opportunity for youngsters, for kids coming in, for people that want to play every week. So I don't see why I should cut back on tournaments to the detriment of the majority of the 128 players on tour who literally want to see if they're any good. This is a very brutal sport because first-round losers, like golf, if you don't make the cut, you don't get paid. What that does is that eliminates a lot of people that really shouldn't be professional, and they should look in the mirror after a couple of years and say, I've gone skint, I can't win a game. Well, someone's trying to tell you. Once you give them a salary, they stay forever. I don't want them to stay forever. I want them to either make a contribution to making the game better, more commercial, or I want them to leave and be replaced by other people. The idea about averaging, as Ronnie said, of course, is totally, completely wrong. The USPGA don't have such a system in place at all, is what he said.
Yeah, but the ATP do.
No, but to take the point, we follow the golf model more than the tennis model. The ATP do have an average system, which means that no one in the world understands, the man in the street, there's no idea of how the rankings come about. A pound money ranking list is so easy and so obvious to understand. But the bigger issue is about opportunity for young players coming in and the pressure and the responsibility of top players. Top players are there because the cream rises to the top and they're the best. The top 16 in the world are the best. But they also bring commercial value to events by entering. Without their entering, at the early stages, those early stages of tournaments would not be televised. And that, frankly, a lot of those tournaments would cease to exist. What we've done is we've created this massively forward-thinking calendar where there is no time to rest unless you decide to opt out. But, of course, Ronnie O'Sullivan and some of the players will always give you the selfish approach because, naturally, it's human nature to want what's best for you. My job is to say what's best for the sport and how we can grow the sport on the back of giving opportunity to everybody by not accepting mediocrity and by giving the opportunity for the cream to rise to the top and then reward them big. The Masters, top 16. The Shanghai Masters, top 16. The World Championships, top 16 seeded through to the Crucible. Every single tournament on the calendar is seeded. The top 16 can't meet each other till the last 16. There's only so many benefits. It does come down to, if you are a top player, I expect you to prove it week in, week out. This sport's about results, not reputation.
Agreed, yes, but playing devil's advocate, you've got somebody like John Higgins who's clearly suffering from a little bit of burnout now, and we have indeed, some of the other guys are saying that, is there possible tweaks to a schedule where you might even have an Asian swing and then possibly a European swing?
This would make
How are we going to achieve that?
It would make so much sense for players. The only problem is your customer doesn't want it. So the Chinese TV, if I said to them I'd like 5 tournaments in a row because it's easier for the players, they're not interested. Get into the real world. The customer is always right. That rule applies to everything. Broadcasters don't want to raise. They don't want 5 tournaments. They want them spread through the year because they maximise their domestic value by that. And we have to go, funnily enough, where the money is, not necessarily what the players want. I'm not here to give them an easy life. I'm here to give them an opportunity to change their lives. And it requires sacrifice. And I don't know a top sport or a top businessman that hasn't had to sacrifice something to achieve his objectives. And snooker players are no different. They are not a protected minority.
Yes, they're not a protected minority, clearly. But you take the example of somebody like a Roger Federer, who doesn't have to go into the last 64 as a top 8 player in one of his... He will automatically get a second-round entrance, which means that automatically a television audience is going to see him. Isn't that also to the benefit of your sport, to have your top stars seen in these occasions?
It certainly is, and I'm being very greedy because I want them to be seen, but earlier. I like the flat draw, 128, simply because if you're not good enough to justify your seeding, you'll get beat. Take the Northern Irish Open. 9 of the top 16, these people I'm supposed to be seeding through to latter stages, never made it to round 2.
It was extraordinary, yeah.
Not extraordinary, it's commonplace because it's quite competitive. You can't take away competition. This event, Betway UK, is the most brutal of all our tournaments because number 1 seed plays 128, number 2 plays 127, and yet 14 players outside the top 64 beat players in the top 64. That's called a level playing field. So you don't get a favour just because you're a top 16 player. What you've got to do is prove you're a top 16 player by results, and then you'll get the benefits of the Masters, the Shanghai and various invitations. There's no easy way out, and it is a question of balance. And by the way, we're an evolving sport. We're not the finished deal. So we're talking and we're discussing through the proper channels, which is the Players Commission or the WPBSA. And those people are not giving me an easy ride, and that's great.
And how many decisions are you making on the back of listening to that Players Commission? Does it have teeth, in other words?
It does. Well, it has teeth through common sense, as everything should have. So the teeth that they'll come up with sometimes suggestions that you should have even thought of yourself. And I mean, I'm very fortunate with the Players Commission because it's a great spread of players having input. You know, you've got Sean Murphy, Joe Perry, Mark Allen, Peter Lines, Rory McLeod, Mark Davis. You've got a great cross-section of players. So I get an opinion from the top and from the bottom and from the middle. I think that one of the decisions we made the other day with their help was, look, we've really got to make sure that finalists can have the choice of when they play their first round match, so you don't go crazy from a tough final straight into a first. And I think Kieran Wilson had that suffering. So we've changed that. We're now looking at different ranking systems, looking at different... These people are passionate about their sport, as I am. But they don't just talk about it on social media. They get involved. And I think that's the message to these other top players, particularly Ronnie O'Sullivan, is don't discuss it on social media. Come to the meetings, make a contribution. But when it gets down to it, it's actually, he can't be bothered. He makes an excuse. No, I'm not, nothing's going to happen. It does happen. It happens all the time. I know that Sean Murphy, for example, has written to Ronnie and said, if there's a couple of small tweaks, could you please drop us a line and let us know what they are? That will be on the next agenda. We're not stupid. We don't want trouble with the biggest name in snooker, particularly.
No, absolutely.
But at the same time, these got to go through the channels and we've got to have proper dialogue.
Yeah, because you must, as a businesswoman, realise that in terms of the perception of this great sport, which has done brilliant things over the last few years, the perception is that your top player is dissatisfied with some elements of it. That must be of a concern to you, at least.
I think if you made the choice of saying, do you want to have the control you had 6 or 7 years ago and no tournaments, fine, or do you want to have a vibrant business that we've got today, a global business, and you're going to have to make some sacrifices? Most players will go for the sacrifice. But it's understandable that they should look... I mean, I think Ronnie's scheme, as we said when we looked at a potential, inverted commas, breakaway tour, is that he'd rather play with 8 players rather than 128. Well, his life is a lot easier if he plays like that. It doesn't work, of course. But the theory is that someone needs to be in control. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which side you come from, the person is me. And after 45 years, there isn't, and I'm not being too big-headed here, but I'm old enough to tell the truth, after 45 years, there isn't anyone better in the world at doing what I do. If that is not shared by the players, frankly, snooker is one of 13 sports. Have it back, you know, we'll do something. You know, off you go, we'll see you later. We are not even a third of the way where I want to be able to take this sport. And it needs everyone to pull together in a constructive fashion to make decisions. And I will listen, because I'm not stupid. I understand that I have to have the players with me. And frankly, I think I've got 128 of the players, but maybe 127 on my side. And that's because I think they believe in the future, and that's what we've created.
OK, let's discuss something else that's definitely on the agenda at the moment, and that is slow play, which we've been looking at, and you've been looking at over the last few months, Alan. There's been a few instances, even this championship, of slow play going on, and indeed referees being able to intervene. Where do you stand on that development?
Yeah, I think it's got some sanctions have got to be issued to certain players, if I'm honest. Upwards of 33, 34 seconds a shot is just... there's no need for it, quite frankly. I witnessed a player this week he'd play a shot, walk round the table, play another shot, go for a wander, play another shot, go for another wander. Not good enough. You've got to get on with it. You know, if you get to this level as a player and this standard, you're obviously a good player. You know what you're doing. You don't need to go walkabout every couple of shots.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse if it's used as a, you know, if it's part of gamesmanship, that's even worse. And I do think in certain instances it is. If you've got someone who likes to run around and get on with it, then they're taking an inordinate amount of time just to do the other fella's head in, basically.
So what are you going to do about it then?
Well, I mean, like we said, we're monitoring it at the moment. I was really hoping that when we announced that we were monitoring, that we'd see an immediate change of attitude from certain players that would speed up automatically rather than be named and shamed. That, frankly, hasn't happened. And it's not a lot of players. You're probably talking less than 10, I would say. Probably 6 or 7 players that seem to be, if anything, getting slower, which is somewhat worrying. So we've said that we're going to make a decision at the World Championships. We're going to monitor the information. I hate bringing in disciplinary rules when there's no need, and I was hoping that during the course of this season that we would see that everyone has improved. If it doesn't happen, then, as Alan says, we've got to take action, and it will come from the referees. It will probably come from an average shot time clock on visual display within the arena for the fans, for the players, and more importantly for the referee. Tough job refereeing, tough job to touch someone on the shoulder and say, "Oi, speed it up a bit,
Actually,
mate."
one of our referees did this week.
Brilliant, a great bit of refereeing.
You'd condone that?
1000%, and I think, but I can also put myself in the shoes of someone who perhaps is playing with a top player who doesn't want to make waves, you know. So there needs to be something that's in the public domain that everyone can see, look, he's dead right, and actually the referee's got no choice, and the player can see the evidence. And if you're not careful, the crowd are going to give you a bit of stick as well. That would go down rather well.
The referees on that point, they get little sympathy and regard in a lot of this game. I see them at breakfast every morning here, and you'll say to Leo or whoever, "What are you doing today?" He'll say, "I'm marking today, reffing tonight." They don't get a minute, these guys, so they've got to make their job a bit easier.
Yeah. That's it. The whole crew in World Snooker, this is one of the things that people don't probably understand. This additional workload that, unfortunately, I've lumped on them by giving them 30 tournaments to play instead of 5 or 6, the knock-on effect of that is that the team behind the team, and that's the referees, officials, as well as the office staff and the professor, I've really put the pressure on them. I know that, and I've got a great team, and they've responded. But they get very little public applause for that, and they deserve some mention.
Just to clarify, the sanctions you'd be talking about, would it be docking a frame? And we see players in golf getting put on the clock.
No, I
think
I suppose the usual way to be sensible, and it does come into common sense. It would probably be a warning, you know, and whether the second is docking a frame or the third, he's losing the match. You need to do something positive to let these people know that we're in the entertainment business at the end of the day. That's one part of it. But the other side of it is the gamesmanship element can happen where people will deliberately slow down. And that, to my mind, is tantamount to cheating. Although there's a few other cheats we've dealt with recently, as you've seen. So we're on the case with that. And I'm looking forward to the future.
Always fascinating having a chat with you, Barry. We really appreciate you coming in. And fundamentally, this sport is going from strength to strength. And if it is a new phase of development where 1 or 2 tweaks are made, then...
Tell me what the tweaks are. I'm listening. I'm all ears.
You heard it here first. Barry, thank you very much.